Troy Kearns, real estate investor, bringing it to you hot and fresh. Today, I've got a special guest, the guy, if you've been wondering who taught me what I know, my real estate mentor, Arron Renfrew. He's my coach. He's who I go to when I've got a question about real estate. He's gonna be coming on the show and we're gonna be talking about how he evaluates deals, what he looks for, all about cap rates, all about NOI, why he makes big time decision and why he makes big time money. This guy is worth a lot of money. He's got huge success. He's got huge background. Arron has been at crucial, pivotal moments of my success. He's a super smart guy. He owns a ton of real estate. You're going to learn a lot from him, as I have learned a lot from him. Make sure you tune in right now today and catch him live. So good afternoon. I've got with me Arron Renfrew from renfrew.net, .org, .edu, .everything. Arron is a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine. He's helped me out with real estate for as long as I've known him. I met him when his dad and him were changing a lock at my mother's house, who she rented out from his father in Renton. And I saw Arron was kind of, following his dad's footsteps. And then when I talked to him, he said he had a bunch of other property. And so I was like, well, this is the guy I'm going to work with. And then that's kind of how it's developed. And then you've really helped me out over the cost, like pivotal, like before I went back to Vegas and I got the REO account, you were like, hey, don't give that up, keep that alive. And so like I said,
yeah, you wanted to just dump it and cut bait, right?
Right, exactly, which is where my head was at the time, just to move on. So you want to talk about like a little bit of where you're at now and how you got there and how'd you start?
Yeah, so growing up, my dad was always talking about real estate. And my dad was an administrator for the Renton School District. My mom was a musician and also was a teacher a little bit. So kind of talking about real estate was a little bit sexy from the general conversation that we would have, at dinner time and stuff, because most of the people in that sphere were of the mentality of being school teachers and that kind of thing. So the thing that he kept repeating the most that really sunk in my head when I was trying to go through college and figure out that whole route of what do I want to do with my life, is he kept talking about the first duplex he ever purchased. He said, Arron, first duplex I ever purchased, Pocatello, Idaho. I can't remember what it was for. It's not, it would hardly be a monthly payment these days for what the whole thing cost probably. But the point was, and I think it was in like 1965 to give you kind of an idea.
Right.
But he said, Arron, that duplex, we lived in one side, your mother and I, we rented out the other side, and the rent from that other side paid for the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance. And it also allowed us to live there for free, and it also bought our groceries.
So your mind, is that your new mind got blown? Your mind got blown? Okay, so we're gonna.
My mind got blown. Yeah, for any of you on audio, this is me. My mind got blown. And it was very impressionable, right? So, and I also had a lot of good, like emotional bonding time with my dad. Like he saw me changing a lock when we first met at your mom's place. I was always doing projects and working on rentals with my dad growing up. So it was just kind of a natural transition that I was attracted to that, because I also had good memories and bonding. And by bonding, I mean sometimes yelling and knock down, drag out fights with my dad at rental properties working on projects.
Yeah. The paint's clean off the windows, Dad. No, it's not.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So when did you buy your first property? Okay, let's talk about this. So you grew up, you graduated high school in Renton, Washington. You went to Liberty High School, you graduated. Then you went to the University of Washington. What did you study at the University of Washington?
At the University of Washington, I was pre-law for most of my time there, which was political science. I worked in a law firm for kind of as an intern for a summer. And while I was there, I realized that the benefit of being able to tell people at Thanksgiving that I was pre-law, and the reality that it's not really whether you're not you're right or wrong in the law's mind, but who's got the better lawyer. I we the attorneys there were specialized in paternity suits with pro athletes. And so a lot of famous people that I saw in the limelight and were doing what I would say weren't good things on the sidelines with the fans. They were getting out of it because the attorneys I worked for that summer were incredible. They were really good. But it disheartened me in thinking that there wasn't right and wrong. So I dropped pre-law, probably wasn't a good enough student for that anyways. And that's when I started focusing in more on the real estate.
So what'd you get your degree in?
Political science. I kept with it to get through it and get it done.
Hence the Facebook and the whole Seattle Council, and
hence I may have a few opinions about local politics that I'm happy to share with people.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, let's sideline that.
Yeah, that one definitely could take on a whole life of its own. So yeah. I think what most people who are probably going to be watching this podcast or this YouTube are going to want to know is like, do you remember what it was like to get started? I mean, you've been investing for probably what, you're 50, you said. When did you buy your first property?
I bought my first property at 27, so almost 23 years.
So do you remember the first property?
Still got it.
Still got it. Okay, let's go. That's great. I'm glad that's the answer. Okay, because
Troy, would you have your first property still?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, but we're in different circumstances. Probably if I started the way you did, yeah, I tend to hold stuff for a really long time as well. I don't have.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, most of my stuff is 10 years old or more, and that's the strategy I go in. I don't go with a 23-year strategy, but we do have a 10-year strategy. So, okay. So what did you pay for it?
He was asking $179 and I paid him $181. I wanted that thing, man. All in.
Seattle?
Seattle.
What's the address on it?
I'm not gonna give out the address on here.
What zip code are you in? What part?
98107, Ballard.
Ballard. Okay. Yeah. So you paid $181,000. How many tenants do you have in there right now?
Right now there's 7 tenants in there.
I think I might know which property we're talking about here.
Maybe so.
Is that close to where I squatted?
Very close, yeah. No, okay. No. It's not the one you're thinking of. No.
Not the one with we call it a chamber that you'd rent out there. Not actually a dwelling unit, but a dwelling chamber. All right. So anyways, $181,000. It was 7 units at the time you bought it, or 7 units now?
No. It's a duplex. 3 bedrooms on each side, and there's 4 people living in a 3-bedroom on one side, and there's 3 people living in a 3-bedroom on the other side.
Okay, so how did you buy the property? Did you get a loan?
I did. WAMU, baby.
Washington Mutual. Do you remember how much you put down?
I remember that I was living below the poverty line when I bought the place.
That's great. We like hearing that.
Huh?
I like hearing that. No, everybody always thinks like, oh man, he must have had to do something. So you're broke, but I
was broke. So I borrowed $8,000 from my grandma.
Okay.
I borrowed $8,000 from my dad. So okay. I had some privilege there. I had some resources, and then I think I put in every frickin' penny I had, which was about, I think it was 8, 8, and 8 that I had to put in to get it.
Got it. So you got the property, you paid $181,000, you used some resources that you had around you, people who believed in you, knew that, that they were going to help you out. Plus you had a little bit of your own money. And so What did you rent out that duplex for?
Oh, Lord. I want to say that each side was renting out for about 750.
So
So
even right then and there, it made sense. It was cash flowing.
it was cash flow positive, baby. Yeah, I think after the math, it needed work. It was a fixer. I had to repair some neglect in the bathrooms and stuff like that were rotting out. But once I fixed those projects with the dad, which were awesome, some good memories of that. Once I fixed it up, I think it was cash flowing. I want to say $500 a month, which was pretty damn tootin'. I mean, that was pretty good for back then.
Right. So now you got what's that 181,000 property worth today?
1.2.
1.2, 23 years ago. So you've actually 10 times it in 23 years.
Yeah.
You're up 10. And then do you have a mortgage on it now? Have you refinanced? Have you taken cash out?
I paid off the original mortgage probably. I'm gonna guess I probably paid the original mortgage off 15 years or maybe even, yeah, 15, maybe even 20 years ago. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, I paid off the original mortgage. I've since re-leveraged it into some other investments. So I've got a line against it using that as security for I think I've got 800 or 900,000 on there now.
Okay, good. And what's the rent bringing you in right now?
2,100 on one side and 2,300 on the other.
So $4,500 a month gross coming in on a property that you paid $181,000 for, that you've subsequently leveraged to build more capital to buy other investments, correct?
Correct. You got the formula, baby.
Okay. So the thing that I love about Arron is he's great about analyzing a deal and finding the value where there's not value. I remember this as you always taught me, hey man, don't go looking at things like what's there, look at what's not there, or find what's not there. Find, like, can you rent out a billboard? Can you,
Cell towers.
Cell towers? Can you take over the other owner was not charging them water or power and it was included in the rent? Can you sub that off and then start creating revenue where you were losing money, right? And that's kind of your deal. For people who are first getting started in investing, where like all these terms are super duper intimidating to them, like the cap rate, like, I mean, even myself, like NOI, like your debt recapture ratio and stuff like that. Do you want to talk about what really matters when you're first doing it? Like how you would evaluate a deal if you were a new guy and how you would evaluate a deal today?
Well, I think the first thing is a shortcut that it took me about 10 years in the business to figure out, and probably smarter people than me would figure it out in day one or be like, duh. But one of my biggest things, because I'm always looking for like kind of rules of thumb so I can look at a deal really fast and decide if it's something I want to dig deeper in, time savers. And one of the easiest things to me now that totally makes sense, and it just seems like a total like no-brainer, is that since I'm a buy and hold long-term value investor, fundamental guy, I look at two numbers. The first number is what interest rate can I borrow the money at?
Okay.
The second number is the cap rate. Is the cap rate, or the capitalization rate, the rate at which capital is being put in my pocket, is that number bigger than what I got to pay the bank? So if I'm talking about a 4 cap on the property, is my financing going to be 3.75 or 3%? If I have a 4 cap on the property and 3.75% on the interest rate, I might dig deeper. All you got to do, all you really at the end of the day know if you're a value investor is know that the cost of funds is less than the money coming in. All right, that's good. Cut it. We're done. Done with the interview.
No. That okay. Break it down for the simple guy. Okay. I've never bought a house. I don't have 23 years of experience. I'm getting ready to buy the first $181,000 rental property, and I want to see if this thing makes sense.
That takes some skill and takes having number one, have good professionals in your corner, accountants, real estate brokers, mortgage brokers. Doesn't mean just get, your best friend buddy from down
Did
the
you
street.
have that when you made that first offer on the 181,000?
I was in an office that had some folks that were giving some good advice.
Got it.
For sure. Yeah. Like one guy, I asked him, in fact, I think I asked him on that deal, trying to think if it was that deal or a subsequent deal. I asked him if I should do it and is it really worth it to get into real estate? And his answer was something like, Arron, I have 23 houses. Each one went up on average $20,000 last year. You do the math. He yelled it in my face. You do the math. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good math.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a capital gains guy. It doesn't turn me on as much as cash flow. So speaking to the cash flow side of things, if you're buying and your expenses are not less than your income, run.
Right.
So many people
as
are
you
in the
remember, that
capital
was
gain.
my first lesson that you tried to teach me.
Tried to teach you. You've probably broken my rule over and over again and been a success at it. And that's good for you, but it doesn't work for me.
No. In fact, it was the contrary. I think you told me, I think when we first looked at that condo downtown Seattle, you're like, I'm not a fan of speculation. I don't believe in buying on speculation. And then I'm like, well,
actually, Troy, why don't you define for your listeners what speculation is?
Well, speculation is that you're speculating, like the stock market, that it's going to go up in value. In this particular
Do we have control
case,
over that?
Nope.
No,
we don't have.
I'm glad that you 20 some years later are bringing that up and throwing it back at me, because I think that's huge. I think the stock market loses focus on that. I think the housing market loses focus on that. Something I know nothing about, like Bitcoin, that, all these things that just go up based on other people's, I don't know if you want to call it a pyramid scheme, but other people willing to come in behind you, jacking you up, making it look like you know what you're doing when there's no fundamentals to it, just drives me crazy. And those things always correct. It's always a matter of time before the last person getting in is like, oh, I guess I got in late.
Right. Do you feel like we're close on that right now?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
we got a lot of corrections right around the corner. Right. I don't think we're you never know until they come and how badly they unravel. I don't think we're looking at 2009, but we're definitely looking for a correction. I'm predicting with all my magic ball voodoo stuff that probably the end of 2021 to 2022. So when we review this in 3 years, we'll see how close we hit that mark of that year.
All right. So I went in and got out of my comfort zone, and I went on Ryan Pineda's show. You should go check it out. It's on it's on the YouTube and it's on his podcast. But
how do you spell Ryan Pineda?
Pineda, like just
okay. Ryan Pineda. Gotcha.
So anyways, one of the things, he asked me before I got on the show, I'm going to ask you, you can just decline that. He's like, do you care about talking about how much cash flow you have coming in a month? And I said, and I was like, oh man, like, because the whole YouTube thing and the whole internet thing is showing people that you're actually an expert by proving about that. So without going into too much detail, could you tell us, when you became financially independent and where you're at today, and what made it for you to be financially independent? For me, it's like, okay, when I stop working and I get rid of everybody, my wealth increases, it doesn't decrease. That's kind of what the layman's terms. Are we on the same page? There you go.
Yeah, for sure. I reached finance. I was an investor for 3 years. I was an investor for 3 years when I hit that mark. I started investing at 27. By 30, I was financially independent. And I don't mind sharing those numbers. For me, financial independence at that
3 years of investing in real estate, you didn't need to work anymore.
Didn't need to, no. Now that was as a single guy living in a basement at the University of Washington, renting a room.
So It just depends on what is important to you at this at your stage in your life, right? Because at that stage of your life, that was fine. Would that work now with Angie and the kids?
Not even close. I mean, no. So at that point, I think I was making 2,000 a month or maybe 2,200 a month in positive cash flow. And that was enough to so that if I didn't work, it would cover all my expenses and I could just go sit on the beach and be a pile of poop.
Good. And where are you at today? Let's talk about doors. Let's talk about because when I left Seattle 15 years ago, you were just starting to get into the student housing, right? I think you had just started your first one. You were up to like X number of dollars in cash flow. I think it was around the $10,000 mark, not much further than that. That's been about 16 years ago. Since then, you've really taken off with doing a lot of, you got a little bit uncomfortable. You got into leverage, which you are like me before, where you didn't borrow a lot of money and you like to pay down debt, right?
Yeah.
So you started going and taking on debt, more debt than you've taken before, and you started to really grow and do syndications and stuff. So where are you at today, and what does your debt look like, and what does your revenue look like? What does your cash flow look like? Without getting into too much details, you don't need to give us to the penny, but just to inspire some people. $2,000 to what? Did you add 1 0 on that? Did you add 2 zeros on that? Did you add 3 zeros on that?
I make more in a day. Well, shit. I'll tell you. I'll tell you what. I'm a proud member of the 1%. I know the 1% is not popular, but if I don't work, I'm a member of the 1%.
Great. So not only are you financially independent right now, meaning that you don't have to work, but your wealth just continues to grow and grow and grow without you having to work on it. So anything that you do either is going to affect it positively or negatively at this point in time, depending on what you do to it, right?
Right.
So what would you tell someone who is, between thinking about getting started in real estate and maybe they're, between the ages of 25 and 45, or they're between the ages of 20 and somewhere they're in there, they're still got some stuff to do. They want to retire. Do you believe it's possible that someone could retire in 5 years from real estate?
Absolutely. I did it in 3, and I know plenty of people that have done it in 5 years. I think 10 years is a healthier goal, especially if you've got responsibilities. But if you are a single person and no responsibilities, no dependents, 5 years is, why not?
So what is the first thing you do when you evaluate a new real estate deal? Let's say that I've got a house, I'm thinking about buying it. I'm a new investor. I've never owned a rental property before. I find a house. I know it's going to rent for $1,500 a month. I've checked it out. Where do you start?
First thing is I try to get rid of my real estate bias. And what I mean by my real estate bias is I love real estate. I live, eat, and breathe real estate, but it's not the only investment out there. So I look at the capital that I have and I look at, okay, what's the best use of that capital? If I leave it in the bank, I know I'm going to get less than 0.5% of return on it. So that's my basis, right? Then I look at it, okay, if I lock it up in some sort of other account, then that's going to be my return. And then I start comparing it to what I can get with the real estate. So I don't buy any real estate that isn't going to add to my cash flow and isn't going to add to my overall returns, right? I mean, I can make 4 or 5% just by paying off debt. So if I've got debt and it's at 4 or 5%, I can pay that off and it's a no-brainer. I've just made 4 or 5% on my money. So for me, I've got to get into double digits before I even will get out of bed.
Got it. So double digit returns, meaning like 10, 11,
10 plus, yeah.
10 plus % before you get out of bed. So if it does, so let's look at it. Let's look at a deal like, I always find the easy deals to evaluate are the ones that, there is no loan, right? So like I told you about like properties with Mississippi, because you don't have to evaluate debt service. So if you're in, so one of the things that I'm telling people to do, and I think you might agree with this a little bit more than you did maybe in the past, but it's so hard to get started. If you're 27 and you're in Seattle and you're looking at rentals that you can buy for $900,000 that rent out for $300 or $4,000, that's a 3 or 4% return. That's not that exciting, is it?
It all depends and you know this, but I'll speak to your audience that maybe some of them will find this useful, is anybody can buy real estate. Anybody can make money in real estate. And over time, anything you buy is probably going to make you money. So what it really comes down to is, what is your goal? What's important to you? Some people like myself get super excited by cash flow, and I'm always pushing myself to increase my cash flow, not to increase my lifestyle, but to increase what I can invest.
Right.
Other people get excited by capital gains. Maybe some people like to flip. I think flipping is crazy, but you're very good and successful at flipping. So, it just really comes down to your why and your what, and getting it done so that it meets your life goals. Your work and your efforts should add value and joy to your life. They shouldn't bring you down. So go back to the question. I feel like I started getting a little preachy about
you got a little
happiness.
preachy. That's okay. I thought we were in service today, and no, I'm just saying, like, if you're brand new, keep that in mind. They're not evaluating. They may not have any money in the bank. So they're not looking at saying, oh, okay, I've got $10,000 of capital and the bank's paying me squat and this place is paying me squat. They're trying to get in. You had to borrow money from your people to get in.
Yeah.
Like, can you get into a deal?
I borrow money all the time.
Right. So
I'm still borrowing money.
So first thing you would say is try to figure out a way to where you're going to get your money from, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then determine what type of asset you're going to buy. You're going to buy a commercial piece of property. You can buy a residential piece of property. Are you going to buy a piece of land?
I think you're getting caught up in the details. I think that a person getting into real estate has to know why they want to get into real estate. Real estate is not sexy. Real estate is dirty, messy. You're dealing with people that are pissed off. You're dealing with city officials that are changing the rules all the time on you.
Right.
You're dealing with repairs, backed up toilets. It's not sexy. If you want to be sexy, go invest in the stock market. Just do something that's turnkey and easy. You got to know what. I've worked with a lot of people over the years getting into real estate investing. And the biggest thing that I see for the successful ones is their passion is bigger than the pain. Your passion has to be bigger than the pain of real estate. Real estate's super powerful, but it ain't sexy. It's a pain in the ass, and you will get discouraged and fall out if your passion is not bigger than your pain.
Right. So we're on the same page. I love real estate. Yeah, go real estate. So let's have you break down a deal. I'd really like you just to break down a deal. If you want, I got plenty of them I could throw at you. And you could go over that 31 unit that I'm about ready to close on in Kansas City, or anything that you're looking at, how you look at things. I'm glad I talked to you before about that one, because initially just going in my mind, I'm like, oh, I need to rehab this whole unit. And that's the same guys that I bought it from. And the first question that you asked me is, can you rent any of these units right now? And the answer was yes. And then, subsequently after that, obviously we realized that that's going to cost us a lot less money, and that's going to big up your cash flow. But sometimes just not even thinking the right way can really screw up a deal, right? You're thinking like, oh my gosh, if I'm a flipper and I think, man, just because I don't like this, I need to fix it. But nothing's wrong with it, right?
Right.
So real estate is kind of figuring out that your opinion really doesn't matter, that the market opinions matter, right? And that's it. Now, do you still have the Jaguar, and do you still mow your own lawns?
You'll be proud of me. I got big enough to where I physically could not mow my own lawns.
Okay.
I do still mow my own lawn at my own residence.
Good. That's therapy.
I find a cathartic Zen time with the headphones on, and the kids can't talk to me.
I'm with you on that. I just didn't think it was the same way when you're doing it for your tenants.
No. So I no longer do the yard work at any of my properties, because the goal is passive income, not active. And my time is better spent elsewhere. Can we talk about the
difference between those?
Sure. So the neat thing about real estate is it can be passive, and you can own a job, and that is a property manager investor, or you can own a business. And it's really hard for someone like me that's self-employed, go-getter. If anybody can, I can. I'm the only one that can do it right. to grow into having a business as opposed to owning a job. So Troy has been very good at reminding me and giving me gentle pushes to grow to the point where I physically can't do everything myself, so that therefore I help others, and I don't. I share the sandbox. I share by hiring people and creating jobs in the community, and good for them and good for me.
It's all about highest and best use, right? Your highest and best use is probably not pulling out the wet lawn that gets stuck in the feed pipe to the bag. It might be actually evaluating another real estate deal, right?
Maybe. And, yeah, there might be some logic to that.
Sometimes you got to hear it from a different messenger, right?
But you know what? In defense of that, being determined, having the passion bigger than the pain, and if anybody can, I can, and that determination, that got me to a certain point.
Hey,
then the growth gets more painful when you get outside of your comfort zone and push beyond that. But that's what's great about the game. That's why I still love real estate, and that's why I'm still kicking ass and taking names and pushing it when I don't technically have to. Because it's about the growth. It's about the passion.
What deals are you looking at now? What are you trying to buy now? Where are you at in your career?
Primarily multifamily deals on a larger scale, just because I need the bigger deals to make it worth my time. And I don't want that to sound, snooty or anything, but buying a single family house to me and putting all the time and effort into that versus buying 150 doors at one shot and putting the same amount of time and effort in, or maybe a skosh more, is all about leveraging my time. I'll buy a single family house. I think last year I bought a triplex last year, which is pretty small, but it was a special situation, so it made sense. But I'm all about leveraging my time and leveraging my talents and leveraging my people.
Good. All right. So what are you buying right now? You're buying large units and collaborating with other investors?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a team sport, man. The more I team sport it and get comfortable with sharing the power, the more I grow and the better I do there too. So that's a lesson too for later on. You know, whether or not we want to admit it.
I'm not there yet. Every partnership I've had has been a bad one, or not everyone, but you know.
You know what? I don't think that there's any perfect partnership. I think there's partnerships that the partnership outweighs the pain of the partnership and the profit of doing it, right? It's partnering with the right people and not expecting perfection, but expecting better than just yourself.
Right.
It's just, I've had plenty of bad partners. I've lost a lot of money with partners.
Right. But overall, you know, even going through it as an education and finding out what you did wrong, and, you know, not just blaming the other guy because you had a hand in it too, you know. So, okay. When you're evaluating a deal, what are the terms and equations that you use on every deal in order to evaluate whether it's a good deal?
I think really what it is going in back to the thing we started with, and that is making sure that the capitalization rate, or the rate at which money comes in, is greater than the expenses going out. So
what's a cap rate, and how do you calculate one?
Cap rate is net operating income equals the rate times the value, and it's simple algebra, although I was never good in algebra. So you basically just take whatever net operating income that there is on a property. Let's say that
so how do we get the net operating income? That's our total revenue minus our total
expenses, excluding the mortgage,
excluding our debt service, right?
Yep.
Which we call the mortgage, right? So once we have that, that's our NOI, is our net operating income. The only number that's not figured in there is our debt service, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then we got our NOI. Let's say our NOI is $100,000. Sure. How do we figure out our cap rate?
Well, if the net operating income is $100,000, what's your purchase price?
Our purchase price is $1 million.
All right. So take your net operating income and divide it by $1 million, and that'll give you your 10% cap rate.
So we take our $100,000 and we divide it into You want to do, yeah, turn your calculator around.
100,000 divided by 1 million. Let's see, I'm guessing it's 10. Survey says 10 cap. All right, I did that in my head.
All right.
That, folks, is what you need, is those kind of mathematical skills.
Or easy layup math that I gave you, like 1 million divided by 100,000. So okay, so that's a 10 cap. Now let's take that on. So you're making a 10 cap. So my interest on that money to borrow it is 9.8%. What do you think about that deal?
If that was how tight those numbers are, that's going to be something where you got to evaluate the deal, and you got to look at it creatively, like we talked about before. I'm not going to buy a 0.2 of a spread on a property where anything can go wrong at any time. For the hope that maybe it'll go up in value one day. So I got to find an angle on that or get better financing.
So one thing that I like, we'll go, we're scooting around a little bit, but let's say, okay, I have $100,000 NOI, but I don't know how to price my property because I just don't know commercial property. I don't know how it's priced. And generally residential property, it just sells on the demand, right? If houses in the area are selling for $250 a square foot, X plus Y equals whatever I'm going to pay for it minus, minus all the negatives and plus all the positives, I'm going to get that. But commercial real estate property is very specific. It's based on what is the NOI and what is the cap rate, right? So let's say, in order to find out what that property is worth, let's say that similar like kind property that's producing an NOI of $100,000 is trading at between 4 and 6% cap rates in the Seattle market. How do I figure out what I'm going to sell it for?
Simple math again. Take the 100,000 divided by your cap rate. That'll give you your sale price. So 100,000. I don't need to do the math for this either. I'm just pretending like you're not giving me easy layups. 100,000 divided by what's the cap rate? 4%.
4%. It's a 4% cap rate.
That's wow. Did I do the math right? 2.5 million. I guess so. Is that it? 100. Know. You're gonna edit this out later, right? Me using the old Texas Instruments here.
Yeah. No, I think you should show them as you do it. Boom, boom, boom. Like show them on the screen.
All right. So 100,000.
Right.
Divided by 0.04.
Divided by 0.04 equals
5 million.
2.5 million. Okay, that's going to be what we should sell that property for if it's a 4% cap rate. Now, let's say it's a 6% cap. Let's do the math again. So we've got $100,000 NOI. It's a 6 cap area. So we're going to take $100,000 and divide it by 0.06.
0.06. And 0.06 is a bigger number, so it should be 3 million, right?
Right.
Wait a minute. Bigger number in cap means the investor needs to get a higher return. So that means the cap's going to be lower, means the sale price is going to be lower.
What? 0.6. Let's go through that. How does that make sense? Explain it to me, Aaron.
All right, Troy, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's the key. So when you're looking at the residential, I love that you brought that up. Residential is what's the demand like? What are the comparables next door selling for? Has nothing to do with the numbers that property produces. When you're talking to a sophisticated or a commercial investor, all they care about is the return. They don't care if that returns in soybeans. They don't care if it's in the stock market. They don't care if it's in real estate. Well, they do because your incomes are treated differently. But for this interview, we'll do a 2.0 someday.
Right.
All they care about is the return, right? So if you're saying that it's a higher return is demanded, I can't pay as much for a property that has the exact same income because I need a higher return, which means I have to pay less. So that's why a 6 cap on 100,000 is going to put you at 1.6, and a 4 cap is going to put you at 2.5.
So the lower that the cap rate trades at, the more I'm going to get for my NOI.
Absolutely. Low cap rate, good for sellers, bad for buyers.
Okay, low cap rate means I'm going to get a high price on my NOI. High cap rate means I'm going to get a low price on my NOI, which is going to be basically my sales price when I go to price it. Because just like residential properties, if I got a $300,000 residential property that I'm trying to sell for $400,000, I'm probably not going to sell it because I'm not priced within the market. So the market for commercial real estate is specific to what cap rates are trading in that space, segment, and area, correct?
Correct. You don't have to be good at math, but you do need to know that formula. That a lot of people like the gross rent multiplier and all those other formulas. I really like the cap rate. Then the art form comes in as looking at the BS that's in the market, because all cap rates aren't the same. You can have a 4 cap on a brand new property and a 4 cap on a 200-year-old property. And unless they're given you're getting quality books, those two aren't equal. Because
why? Because of repairs and maintenance?
Repairs and maintenance, inefficiencies in heating and cooling, all those kind of things come into play. And so that's when the art comes in, is being able to detect the bullshit, because every deal has bullshit. And that's not a negative on the sellers or anybody. It's just different accounting practices, different visions of reality, and different hopes and dreams.
Well, it's simple. It's simple. If you're going to market your property, right, for sale, are you going to try to put all the NOI in there? Are you going to try to make sure that if you have storage on site, or you're selling something that's benefiting that property directly, and that can help your NOI and that can help your sales price, are you not going to put all of that on there?
Right. So
are you saying
actually, I've got a real life example for you. This has actually happened to me last night. So I'm looking at this 30-unit property, and the sellers put in all their advertising 120 NOI, 120,000 a year NOI, and they advertised, hey, at this price, it's an 8 cap. Woohoo! 8 cap sounds great. I'm very interested. I go in and do my due diligence. I pull the last 3 years tax returns, and guess what? There wasn't 1 year of 120,000 NOI in the property. There was 108,000, there was 115,000, there's 110,000. So you add those up, I did the math, it's 110,000. So you're like, well, hey, Aaron, 110,000 is still a lot of money. Well, let's do the math on that. If I have 110,000 and they advertise 120, that's a difference of 10,000. So if I take that 10,000 and divide it by the 8 cap that they promised, that's $125,000 difference of sales price. And I went in and I said, I want my 125,000 off. And they said, are you kidding me? You gave your word you would do that. And I said, you gave your word that you're giving us $120,000 in cash flow, and you didn't.
How'd that work out?
Well, it's a seller's market, so they're telling us to go piss up a rope. But
what
I
does
gotta have my
piss up a
standards.
rope actually mean? How does that work?
Well, mechanically, if you piss up a rope, I think you end up pissing on yourself.
Okay, good. So good. So they were in a nice way telling you, we don't care that our math is wrong. We're in the right market, and go buzz off. So you're saying that agents sometimes will put fake numbers on the properties that they're selling?
No, Troy, I would never say that.
But you're saying that you should double check your math just in case the numbers got put in on accident.
The proof is in the pudding. There's outright fraud, and then there's mistakes, and then there's difference in accounting principles.
Right.
Like, one thing you'll see on some of these operating agreements, or not the operating agreements, but the balance sheets, is maybe you'll see like a $5,000 car allowance in there. Well, that's not something that I put in my operating things as a car allowance. So I take that out. So for them, they would put that in and be legit, because that was an expense they were actually expensing. For me, it wouldn't be legit. It would be, chewing down my returns artificially. It's a tax play as opposed to running the property. So you got to know your stuff. You got to dig into it. You got to know what you're looking at, and then decide if it's right for you when you have as much information as you can possibly have.
All right. So now that you've got financial freedom, you've got, how many units do you have total?
Over 1,300.
1,300 total units.
Yeah.
So what is the most exciting part about real estate? Because obviously you've hit your financial goals, you've hit your personal goals, and what else is left? Why are you still chasing the dragon? What excites you about real estate?
OCD, maybe.
That's good.
I mean, So if I literally did nothing to my portfolio for the rest of my life, I would still be a rich man upon my death. But the portfolio would crumble. So ego keeps me in, and I'm wanting to maintain what I've built, right?
Right.
So that's part of it. And then with all the monkey business the Fed is doing, again, back to city municipalities, everything else, you got to stay on top of things and continue to grow out of all the extra taxation and all the stuff that they're sending at us. So for me,
it's different. I think it's different than what the way you're explaining the reason you're in. I think we're very similar in this way.
okay.
I think you like to solve the problem. And
I love solving the problems.
Yeah. So I think that's why you're in real estate. I think that like you like solving whatever the problem is. You like to figure out if that deal can work and you can solve the problem of why it can work for you.
I don't jump out of airplanes anymore, and I do like adrenaline.
Okay, good.
I like it when millions of dollars are on the line. It's exciting.
Okay, good. So you said you don't do any flips. Really.
I don't say I won't do any flips. I just don't.
So, for me, I'm always doing flips to generate capital. Yeah. What are you doing what did you do to generate capital?
Well, real estate broker, property manager, that kind of thing. My first deal was funded by bartending. So now, as much as I can, this is actually kind of an interesting segue and an interesting problem to have. So I'm what I call a tweener.
A what?
Not a tweaker. I'm a tweener.
Tweener.
So when you're first getting started in real estate, you're operating in this section that's sort of made for first-time home buyers and the ma and pa do-it-yourselfers. And there's this game you play. And then the big boys are over here playing a very different game. And the journey from the, buying the home 3% down as owner occupied, I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix it up and paint it. And then I'm going to either rent it out or I'm going to flip it or whatever. That game changes to where you start to move into this commercial realm. The rules of the game in this over here, you gotta work and have an income to get a loan. Over here in the big girl realm, you don't have to do that. They care about the deal. They care about your management and your track record, right? So on the journey to here, you're in the tweener land where you're kind of doing some deals where you have to have a job, and then you're doing some deals where you don't have to have a job. So if you want to get, it's so funny. Here's a great example. Last year, I took a loan for $13 million to do a big boy deal. A couple months later, I was trying to get a loan from a bank for $300,000. Now, yes, is $300,000 more of a risk to a bank than 13 million?
Right. Just consumer loan requirements versus commercial loan requirements. It's the same thing.
Exactly. So I'm a tweener.
So I got mistakenly, my bookkeeper let one of my Bank of America's mortgages that I've had set up for 15 years on the same account with the same payment. They kicked it out of their system and then we didn't catch it. So now I've got a 30-day late on a mortgage. And it's like, nobody will loan me money for anything, but none of my commercial deals have slowed down.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares in the commercial section because they know you know what you're doing. The credit score is not a reflection on anything other than consumer debt.
Right. Yeah. So it's very interesting being a tweener and operating in both the things. And my mind explodes when I get denied for what I would consider a small loan. And then I get this loan that I don't think anybody in the right mind should give me.
Are you good at breaking down the debt recapture factor? The 1.25 when the banks are trying to evaluate like whether your deal is going to repay their debt or not. I forget what the exact
DSCR, debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah, debt service coverage ratio. Yeah, can you break that down for people and explain why that's important to a bank and why that's important to somebody who's borrowing from a bank to understand?
Well, there's kind of a love-hate around the debt service coverage ratio, right? Like if you're going into a deal and you see all this opportunity and possibility, you may not care how the last 2 years of average income is performing on there, but a bank sure will. But by the same token, I consider the banks, even when it's a love-hate, I consider them my partners. And if they're scrutinizing the deal, I want to know why. And I want them to scrutinize a deal. In fact, I've gone into deals and done all cash, but also applied for a bank loan so I could get the scrutiny, right? So the debt service coverage ratio is basically the bank wants to see, usually it's like 1.2, 1.25. They want to see, for the 1.25 example, that there's 25% more income coming in after all expenses than is required to service the debt service coverage ratio. They don't care about the keep you in business ratio. They care about their debt. They care about their payments to them. So they want to see that there's a 25% cushion between what
if you
the
don't
property
have
makes and
that,
what they're owed.
how do you get them to do? Is that like you got to put more money down?
More money down. I'm looking at you because I know you know the answers to the questions.
Some of them,
you got to put more money down. You got to bring the purchase price down, or somehow show that the property's making more money.
Right. Or you could show a lease of somebody that you've got in the back pocket that's going to be changing that.
That would go under the making more money side. Yeah.
Right. Cool. So, okay. That's one. Okay. Another you hear about, I know, you know, internal rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that is investor specific, right? When you're bringing investors on, they're always worried about what their IRR is, their internal rate of return. Can you break down what that is and how you look at that? Because you do a lot of deals like that.
Yeah, not being a capital investor, I kind of look at the IRR, or internal rate of return, with a little grain of salt, because the internal rate of return is like, hey, look at this. There's all kinds of huge things going on over here. We're not giving it to you, but it's happening over here. And you should look at it on your statement. You and your accountant should be happy. And eventually it may come to fruition, or it may not. So it's certainly something I look at. But essentially, a real estate deal typically has two things that you're looking at. You're looking at your external return, or your cash flow, and you're looking at your internal rate of return. So two examples of cash flow would be just that: excess rent going into your pocket every month.
Right.
I would also look at the depreciation that you can get, which changes your tax scenario, which helps you keep cash in your pocket. Those are two tangibles that I look at: cash flow and the amount of money that I'm keeping in my pocket from taxes. I consider those the external rate of return, meaning every month, that's money in my pocket that I can buy groceries with or more investments. By the counter side of that is the internal rate of return. That's factoring in your appreciation of the property over inflation. And over time, the properties generally go up because the dollar is being devalued, another topic. And you've also got your principal reduction, right? So when you combine those internal ways, you can't access it unless you sell or refinance. That's why I don't like it. But when you combine that internal rate of return with your cash flow, that's when you start getting up to your double-digit returns. It gets sexy, right? A 4 or 5 cap, that's giving you a 4 or 5% return. You add on, you know, your say 2% a year of depreciation. That's going to be maybe a 6%. But you see your people bragging real estate. Oh man, I'm making a double-digit return. Well, that's when you kick on the IRR. That happens, or you're doing a quick flip or something.
Right, right. So real estate is, so we did a video the other day. It's not released yet, but
Troy, how do I tune in to see that video when it's available? How do I get on the list?
Well, you definitely need to make sure you subscribe to the Troy Kearns channel on YouTube, on TikTok,
Troy Kearns YouTube, okay,
on Facebook, on all of the social medias, and subscribe. Make sure you get the notifications and hit the like button and comment. Okay. Now
I'll do that, Troy.
So I lost my train of thought, but what I was trying to explain to you is, like, when I was looking, I don't know if you know, but I have been investing in the stock market since I was 17. Like that's,
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. So that was initially what my plan was, to get money, was the stock market. So
yeah.
And I think it's funny because I invested for literally, I just pulled out like a year and a half ago, and had never touched it. The same money that I put in when I was 17.
Yeah.
You know, and I never got any checks. I never got any like
dividends.
I never got any money. If I did make money, they let me know about it through the IRS, even though I didn't physically make that money, but my stock went up. They let me know about it. So I was comparing, like, you know, you can own a house for $181,000, like using your first example, for $24,000 down or whatever you put down first, and you can control this big asset, get return on it for 23 years, and then it goes up to being worth $1.2 million, which is much more common of a scenario than owning a stock that you put $10,000 in, waiting 23 years, getting cash on cash return, which you're never getting with the stock market. And so like people always talk about, man, there's so much upside if the stock goes up, but what are they doing to make cash flow in the middle? Because they can't make cash flow on the stock market.
Well, I mean, I know people that are kicking off dividends and buying, blue chip dividend stocks and making 5 or 6%, and then they compare it to my real estate, and I just go to snicker and say, yeah, sure, because it's not the whole picture. They've got upside, and that you can cash flow it, right? But
what's their tax benefit look like?
Exactly.
What's their so? Would you say that the IRS is favorable to full-time real estate investors?
Absolutely. They need housing. So they are willing to give all that. It's not cheating the tax code. The tax code is written so that people like myself and yourself are encouraged to invest and provide housing. So
do you think, so what you're saying is taxes, not paying them, that's okay?
It's never not okay to pay taxes because they will come for you. Just ask Wesley Snipes.
But it's okay if the IRS says that you don't owe anything because you lost money on paper based on a real estate strategy, and therefore you've not paid taxes, but you've deferred them possibly for forever, right?
Possibly for forever, depending on your strategy. Yeah.
Right. So you've got.
I know I'm a better investor with that money now than they are, and I'll do more for housing than they will by taking it from me and redistributing it. So,
all right. So Arron being a single guy versus Arron being married now for the last how long now?
8 years. 8 years. I'll be 9 this July.
Okay.
Now, no, wait a minute.
You were either a year ahead or a year behind.
Oh crap! No. I think it'll be 10 years.
I think you're going to be. Yeah.
July of 2011.
Okay. So yeah. So 10 years coming up here.
Yeah.
Has that changed you as a real estate investor?
Absolutely.
How so?
So my comfort level and my sophistication level was grind. 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day, every day, grinding out real estate. And you have a wife and you have kids and that other responsibilities. You can't grind it out every single day of the week and focus only on real estate. So I've had to become a better and more sophisticated and more grown up with my big boy pants on investor because of my family, because I want to spend time with them and they need my time. Right. So having a family has forced me to be better at working in partnerships and teaming up and trusting others. I've had to. I literally could not maintain my previous projections doing it the old way. So I complain about my family as far as being a burden, but it's a blessing because it's made me have to grow up. And plus I'm not a lonely old dude, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So definitely not a lonely old dude, and definitely not old. But so what I think about, like, when I think about you and I think about real estate investing, I think it's the same thing as like, did you picture you were going to be where you are when you first started? Could you even fathom that you would have what you have going on? I mean, I know now you do have it right now, but when you first started and you had $181,000 first property, were you thinking, man, I'm going to be borrowing money for $13 million loans and getting turned down for $300,000 ones in the next 23 years? I mean, did you really think you'd get there? What was the long-term goal?
Troy, my goal was to hit $100,000 a year. I wrote down on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, similar to this, laminated it, put it on a keychain, carried it around with me. So it was big and awkward. And people would say, Arron, why are you carrying that junk around in your keychain, kind of thing, right? So I had to talk about my goals.
Right.
I mean, imagine putting your keys on this, right? And walking around with this in your keychain. People are going to think you're a moron, but it forced me to talk about it. And my goals on there were to make $100,000 a year in positive cash flow. And that seemed like a big deal. And that seemed really hard to attain. And I just made it a big deal, and I made it the most important thing in my life. So it's all I focused on.
Have you hit
So
it?
to answer your question, yeah, I didn't imagine I'd be where I am today. And I'm hoping that in 10 years from now, I can't imagine where I'll be then either.
So for people who, and I'm going to wrap it up real quick because I know that just us
Real
talking.
quick, this has been grueling, man. I thought we were going to have an intermission here. Anybody who's still staying with us, thank you. I'm glad to anybody who's made it this far, get a hold of Troy. I'm glad to talk to you, answer any questions you have, because you've earned it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, yeah, I didn't know it was going to be this long, but you always have good information. You're going to be coming to town in a couple of weeks. We're going to have you in the studio. We're going to have this thing. It's going to be airing live. I'll cut that part out actually, because
it's kind of funny. Airing live.
It's going to make it look like it's going live, or maybe it won't. I don't know. Anyways, this video is going up. You're going to be on it. We totally appreciate you sharing what you've shared with us. And I think when you do come into the studio, we will go live and we'll have people ask questions to you, and you can kind of queue them up. And then, you know, if there's something that you can't answer, maybe I can, you know, grace them with a modicum of my knowledge that you've bestowed upon me.
Hey, you've taken it and ran. I gave you principles, and you've done. What's really interesting is you seem to say and value the principles and ideas I've given you, and I've loved the relationship we've had. It's been my honor to see you just take off and explode with your career. But I also think it's really interesting that you've taken what I gave you and gone in, you know, similar direction, but also to a completely different direction with the commercial stuff you're doing and with the flipping and stuff, which is way beyond anything I ever told you. But the principles, I think those are what's key. And then of course the hustle muscle, being willing to get out there and do it.
You gotta hustle. That's one thing you and I both have in common. I've been, you know, getting in trouble for doing my own pesticides, and you're getting in trouble for doing your own lawns. And old habits die hard. And I'm glad that you've been here to share the journey with me. And in 10 years, I can't imagine where you're going to be, and I can't imagine where I'm going to be. So pound it, and stay safe. Okay.
All right, Troy, you stay safe as well. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Troy Kearns, real estate investor, bringing it to you hot and fresh. If you like that last video, you're going to like the rest of the videos we've got. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification